To follow the item of the agenda, we had reached an agreement this morning on how to, on including a certain point here, the Jugendamt cases. I have a list of petitions, or rather of petitioners. There are 6 of them, and I would like to welcome them to the Petitions Committee. And the only thing I would like to ask them is that, since I imagine all 6 of you would like to speak, we'll have to limit your speaking time. So we'll give each one of you 3 minutes. So you will have 18 minutes in total. Usually petitioners receive 5 or 6 minutes. One lady is telling me that there's something wrong. We've been waiting for 4 years for our petition to be discussed. And this time it was placed in the agenda. In many other occasions, it was deleted from the agenda. We've been waiting 4 years. Sometimes the petitioners weren't able to come, but we've been waiting for 4 years. I understand you and take note of your comment. I understand you perfectly. So, at 6:30, we will have to leave. At 6:30, the committee will have to end its work because the interpreters will stop working. And I understand that you wish to open a debate. We want to have you speak. We want to have the politicians, the committee, the commission speak. A debate is not just one side speaking to you. I hope that I think that you will want to exchange your points of view with us. So, if all of you wish to speak, which I consider very logical and very good, and I regret that it's been 4 years that your petition has delayed in being heard. But so I'm suggesting that you have 6 statements of 3 person each. Otherwise, I can if I propose 4 minutes each, that means 6 times 4, 24 minutes that you will all speak. And nobody in this committee has ever received 25 minutes to present their case. So I would like to ask you to understand this. 4 minutes to each one of you, and then we'll open a debate between ourselves and you as well, because I imagine that you don't just want to comment, but I imagine that you wish to open a debate. If there is a debate where we can also reply, that would be great. Yes, that is how it works. That's how the rules are. You will speak first. Then the commission will speak, or they would if there had been somebody from the commission here. It looks like we have a problem here. There's nobody from the commission here to reply to the petitioners. We have seen the German member who tried not to have our petition discussed has left. Yes, that's true. That is a German member. But here the rule is the following. The petitioners speak, the commission replies, and then after the commission, after whatever the commission says, a debate is opened with the members and with yourselves as well. You have the right to speak as well. But in this case, I have to warn you that there is nobody here from the European Commission, and that is not the fault of the members in the Secretariat. It was decided this morning that this debate would take place. So, are you still interested in holding this debate in view of this? Well, if there is no reply from the European Commission, then what will our petition be filed without any reply? Then what exactly will we be talking about? It's a question. It's not an argument. I just want to understand. We would be willing to explain to you what the problem is from our point of view, but how can we have a debate without somebody replying? Then will our petition be shoved aside? What's going to happen? I really regret the situation because it should not be like this. You should be able to have a reply from the European Commission, and after the reply of the European Commission, there should be a debate, not just a debate between yourselves and the members. But this is how things have come out.
Yes, Chair. I think given the situation, which is quite a special one, because normally the Commission should be here and they should have waited for the decision of our committee on the agenda, and then they could work out whether they had to come or not. So it's the Commission that's in the wrong here. Now, I do think perhaps some members did want to take this subject off the agenda, but in terms of formalities, that is something that was decided at 9 o'clock, right when we adopted the agenda, and the Commission could have waited until 9 a.m. today to work out whether this was on the agenda or not. If the Commission's not there, it's the Commission's fault. It's not the petitioners' fault. They're here. They've come from far away. I think it's the least we can do to listen to them, and I think we could tell the Commission how important this discussion is this afternoon, and they will have to provide a response, but not now, unfortunately. That's what's happened.
I understand you perfectly, and in deference to the petitioners who have come from far away, I'm going to open this debate. But we can't do things, a debate without the Commission, just between the petitioners and ourselves, because the rule says that the Commission has to reply. But if nobody has a problem with this, then we will continue the debate with the petitioners. Yes, Mr. Moulin, please be brief, because we need to give the petitioners the chance to speak.
Normally, we wouldn't have to tell the petitioners that it was cancelled, and it wasn't decided until this morning.
Il va te faire la réponse.
Excuse the Secretariat for taking part in this discussion, but it was a decision of the coordinators of this committee not to put the item on the agenda for today's meeting. When the coordinators therefore approved the last agenda without this item, the Commission was informed at that stage and made its arrangements in order that the officials would be present for all the items on the agenda. The proposal that you made this morning, Mr. Boulon, to place this item on the agenda received the support of the majority of the committee. Therefore, that is why there is the debate now. But sadly, because of the extreme short notice, the Commission was unable to provide somebody on that basis. But I think the objective of the Chairman and the committee, as the Secretariat has understood it, was to, because the petitioners were here, thanks to you, very largely, that they should all be able to express themselves in the committee and have an exchange of views with the members, and then we would take things forward from there.
Después de esas explicaciones, insisto que no.
Following these explanations, I have to admit that this is an irregular situation, at least. But let's not lose any more time, and let's give the floor to the petitioners. 5 minutes for each petitioner. That will be half an hour in total for you. Please, Mrs. Gilberti, Colombo.
¿Usted quiere ser la primera? Es que...
Who wishes to speak first? If Mr. Gilberti is here, that is who should speak first. I have a list here. I have Mr. Gilberti, Laurent, Christidis, Colombo, Joly. Who is going to speak first? Who is going to take the floor first? Okay, it looks like I'll start. My name is Colombo. Yes, Mrs. Colombo, you have the floor. So, I think it's rather clear to everyone the problem is not a particular German member, but the attitude of Germany towards everything that has taken place with these petitions. With the members of the Commission that aren't here, with the a member of the European Parliament who is not here, and therefore I have to adjust to that, although this is supposed to be a public debate. The other thing I'm observing is that for petitions against English social services, or rather than the attitude of Denmark, we have had a real show from the Austrian and German deputies who said that this was not possible, that it was an issue of human rights and not of family rights. Therefore, it was a legal issue on which they could not intervene. Apparently, in Germany, certain rights can't be denied to some children, but there were some Austrian and German children in Denmark. Hundreds of children that have been detained in Germany. That's something we can't speak about. We've seen that with what happened with our petition today. First it was there, then it wasn't there, and then there wasn't the representative, then there wasn't the Commission. My statement is very concrete. Since 2009, 2010, there was a discussion, and it was observed that there were serious violations of the right of free movement in Europe. Since then, I haven't heard anything. To sum up the issue very briefly, we have a German parent who the German institutions provided him with some documents concerning how to deal with the issue of his children, and apparently there was a falsified translation, and anyway, this person's children ended up in Germany and could not be moved from there. All the rights that are being denied to them are, for instance, the right to have 2 parents, 2 languages, 2 cultures, and the German head of the representative of the Commission had written to various associations that Article 24 of the European Treaty on the Rights of Children was not applicable. But how applicable is it that these rights should be violated in Germany? Probably, I will simply need to say what has happened since that last discussion in 2010. What happened? I haven't seen my children again. I have been accused of being a criminal, a delinquent, of being insane, even in this parliament, by the German members. I have received my master's degree and written a book on children's law, but my children don't have a mother. And it may be an issue that some other parents may be good parents or not, but I still should have a right to see my own children. But Germany is only thinking to make these children German. It's not being interested in anyone. Every time we read that the Kindeswohl is being followed, but that is just the German interest to keep our children. But there are a few people that are moving always towards Germany. These children have been taken away. I've lost my job. I've almost lost the house that I bought 2 years before I was married. And since this is a business, I've almost lost all the savings that my parents had to work hard to accumulate. And I don't know what else to say. What's happening is that every time there are more than just these 6 or 24 minutes, but any petitions against Germany, they're never being accepted. So, people, and I can assure you that there are many of them, because the European elections are coming close up, around every petitioner there is a family, there's an extended family, there are friends, and there are acquaintances. And all of us, we are really tired with these anti-German feelings that are caused by the Germans themselves. That is, we are being treated just as people without rights. Our children, since they're not German or Austrian, or they're only halfway German, they don't have rights. Therefore, we are not willing to hear that this is an issue of family law or of internal national law, and that therefore there's nothing can be done. Because these children are not having any contact with one of their parents. And I will end on that point. Thank you. Who is the second person who would like to speak? Please tell me your name.
Sigo el Gilberti.
Is it Mr. Gilberti? Yes, Mr. Gilberti, please.
J'ai présenté une pétition.
I presented a petition on the abusive use of the European arrest warrant in a family matter. I was imprisoned in October 2012 by a German arrest warrant issued by the Court of Landshut, accusing me of no longer paying alimony, child support. And that's a fact. I'm now refusing to pay child support, or a ransom, as one might put it, for my children, because the Landshut court and the Jugendamt social workers and the police of Landshut have discriminated against me. They have humiliated me. They refuse to let me see my children. They forbid my children to come to France to meet their French family. So on the 8th of October 2012, I went on a hunger strike and even stopped drinking for 10 days. For 1 year, I was under strict judicial control in France. I was extradited in October 2013, while the court in Germany knew perfectly well that the arrest warrant was not admissible because there was a formal error. It was for failure to reply to a summons to the court that was sent to the wrong address. That's why I didn't respond. So I drew attention to my case. I felt that it was scandalous, quite apart from the threats that I received from German police officers, quite apart from the telephone tapping that a certain Munich police commissioner ordered. This was between Greece and France, these phone calls. I was sent to Germany. I went through 6 prisons in 10 days, so real prison tourism. I'm now out of prison and I've now lost my job. To explain a little more about the decision to pay child support, this actually has no legal force because I was not aware of that legal decision. I already paid much too much child support, actually more than what I had been ordered to pay. I paid around 600 euros per month versus the 306 that the court had ordered me to pay. And when I saw that my ex-wife was a friend of the judge, the court of Landshut, when I saw that my ex-wife knew the whole gang, the judge himself has a sister working in the Jugendamt, which is this body responsible for decisions concerning children in this administrative district. When I saw that my ex-wife's lawyer was sponsoring this association, so when I had seen, in other words, that I had just fallen victim to a whole band of friends involved in this matter, that's when I decided to stop. I phoned the Jugendamt and said, if it's in the welfare, in the interest of the child, to pay, bearing in mind that I do not know where my children live. I do not even know if they are alive. I am stopping payments. And the response that I got from the social workers at the Jugendamt was that until I receive a death certificate for my children, I should continue to pay. Well, you can wax lyrical about the best interests of the child in Germany, the welfare of children in Germany, but I have been humiliated, I have been discriminated against. I am now here with my petition. You have to see what you can do with it. I mean, certain members are missing from this hearing. But the fact is, I have a French family who are quite Europe-minded. They live in Belgium, in Italy, as well as in France. I consider myself to be an ordinary citizen, not a second-class citizen, as some German social workers seem to think. And it's quite clear as far as I'm concerned. I think I will soon go back to prison because the second European arrest warrant is underway because the judge has made sure there have been no errors this time. So it's nice to have these threats from a judge. And it seems to me that it's perfectly normal to expect that my children should be able to come and visit their family on holiday. Seems to me quite a normal thing to expect, and until that is possible, I will not pay child support, so I'll soon be in prison for that.
Laurent.
The next petitioner is Mr. Laurent, I believe.
Pardon, monsieur, je prendrai la parole pour la part.
Sorry, sir, I'm taking the floor on behalf of Cédric Laurent.
Donc, monsieur Cédric Laurent.
Mr. Cédric Laurent is also affected by this issue, as is Mr. Gigou. Virtually nearly all the non-German petitioners are affected by this administrative measure that the German authorities are applying. So just to explain the case of Mr. Cédric Laurent. He's under French jurisdiction, and it comes under Regulation 39 Brussels 2A. He has to pay €250 of child support. He's been told that he has arrears of €6,000 that he has to pay because his ex-wife, with the support of the German authorities, has been getting support from Social Security since 2011 from Germany. So this is an arbitrary decision which is incompatible with the principles of free and fair justice. I could cite all sorts of legal texts to you, but you have the petition before you, I think. If you want, you can give us the petition. You have it. It's the Beistandschaft petition. Well, if you give us further information, we can put it in the minutes of the Petitions Committee. Well, it's very important to understand this Beistandschaft does not allow of any appeal. It's an administrative measure. And the German authorities enforce this through Brussels 2A throughout Europe. That's undeniable. Mr. Cédric Laurent has just had a judicial ruling against him, stating that he's in arrears by €6,000. In my case, I don't know how many tens of thousands of euros I'm said to be owing when I've lost everything. I worked for 10 years in Germany. I built a house in Germany. I did everything I should have done, but I've been stripped of everything in Germany by illegal measures. It's already difficult enough when you don't speak the language, when you take a lawyer and you can't even trust the lawyer, because you can't trust German lawyers now if you are a foreigner, to be honest. All the cases that I know about, you've seen that the German lawyers are working for German interests against and to the detriment of foreigners. And I think, well, now Mr. Rainer Wieland is here, he perhaps could listen to me. The German authorities should realize we are in Europe. I have major problems with Germany now, but I didn't go looking for them. It was your authorities, Mr. Wieland, who created these problems. I might be accused of being anti-German, but I don't know if that's true, but I have just had problems with Germany. I went to the country, I learned the customs of the country, I learned the language of the country. I tried to get to grips with your legal doublespeak. All these extremely difficult concepts to understand, and we have just been ripped off and treated as second-class citizens. I'm sorry, Mr. Wieland, perhaps we are criminals, but in this case I'm proud to be a criminal because I have certain principles, which is that for the welfare of children one should have two parents, whether they be French, Spanish, of whatever nationality. We are here to build a Europe of peoples, not a Germanic Europe. I'm sorry. Sorry, that's enough.
Alors, vamos a continuar.
So let's continue. Thomas Bronca, is that correct?
Il signor Putin che è qui e che aveva anche lui una petizione sulla Beistandschaft, non era nella lista che lei ha letto, ma ha una petizione anche lui Beistandschaft, e il suo caso, come tantissimi altri casi, era per chiudere l'argomento Beistandschaft. Se posso, per chiudere l'argomento Beistandschaft, per non tornarci sopra più. Mancava un pezzetto. Sì.
Microphone. I wished to finish the Weissenschaft issue in the 5 minutes that were allotted.
Sono un cittadino europeo anch'io.
Sì, io capisco.
Yes, I understand. And there are other European citizens who also need to speak. Like Mr. Thomas Bronca, is he here? Mr. Bronca, yes.
Monsieur, je vous parle en français parce que c'est la...
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll speak in French because it's the language of human rights. And I'm going to talk about human rights. Now, since 2007, I have to bitterly recognise that there's been an incomplete or incorrect response from the German authorities, and also that's as regards the Human Rights Council of the United Nations. I've got the response here that shows the day-to-day reality of all the petitioners, all of the victims here of the Jugendamt and family services in Germany. Now, they say that they have acted in accordance with the law, but which law? Now, the Jugendamt has the right legally to lie to family courts, even though they should be heard by those courts. It's exempted from the right for certain procedures. Now, they can be exempted for the right to have certain expertise, the psychiatric expertise and so on as regards the health of the child. They can also have court rulings changed just by refusing to respect them. And also, we can find it hard to check the actions of the Jugendamt in courts. It's not the case that we can do that, and there are lots of regular breaches. It's hard to put forward legal complaints if guardianship and custody has been withdrawn. It's really hard to pin down the Jugendamt, and when we have done that, they haven't expressed as agents of an official authority, but instead they have talked about personal positions, so you can't really get hold of them at all. And there's also the time factor. It's not rare for such proceedings to last 10 years or more. Of course, your children become alienated. You can't recover the ties with your children. It's a vicious circle. And their visiting rights aren't respected, and that of course accentuates the alienation, which justifies the lack of visiting rights in the first place. Now, once you do find the means to complain and ask for damages from the Jugendamt, then of course they will come at you with financial measures. There are more, it's not always divorces, there are lots of intact families who are suffering this fate as well. We've got lots of examples that you can see on the internet. And it's not just binational parents, it's also cases where both parents are German. We can see that children are taken away from their parents. There are absurd grounds which are used if the worker from the Jugendamt goes to visit the family and doesn't like the furniture. Now, at the start of we were wondering what the Commission, the Parliament, the EU could do, because we're talking about national laws apparently, but I would say that human rights are universal. You can't have German human rights, French human rights, Italian human rights. They're universal rights. The German Constitutional Court is refusing this in 90% of cases. They're not accepting the decisions, the rulings. It's not a yes or no, they just don't even deal with it. And we can also see that there's a lack of respect for the treaties of the EU. They're not putting certain issues to the Court of Justice of the EU. Of course, things can't be referred to this court by individuals, but it has to be the courts that do that, and the Constitutional Court has to do that for all things concerning this. And so we don't have any resort, because it's only you that can take that path. We think that even if it's Germany, we need to have infringement procedures against Germany because they are violating European treaties. And to conclude, I'd like to apologise to all of those parents who are suffering this fate. I am a victim like you, even if I may be German, but I'd like to apologise to you all.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
The next petitioner, Alex Christis.
Ich werde auf Deutsch.
I will speak German, although I am Greek and not a migrant. I apologise, ask for your indulgence, but as I'm speaking unprepared, I'd like to tell you about the decision that was handed to me in 2005 when my children were 6 and 8 years old, respectively. My wife had very serious psychological problems. I wanted to protect my children. After the separation, the children came to me and didn't want to go back. But we didn't want to lose contact with her. But at the beginning of the divorce, that's when the discrimination problems began. When the proceedings began, I'd been living 35 years in Germany, had a German passport, had a professorship in Germany, and I was on the local council in Gießen. So, in other words, I said I wanted to see my children as much as the mother, and the judge said no, that's not possible. But that's wrong. It is possible to have alternating custody for both parents. But the judge said, oh, maybe it's like that in Greece, but it's not like that in Germany. So that's how it started. It got worse and worse. A year later, the time I could have with the children was reduced by 36%. I contacted the social services. And I had strong support in that from two ladies who were on the case. They were actually taken off the case after supporting me. I don't know if that was a punishment. Then one of them wrote to me to say that she'd been forbidden to speak to me anymore. In 2008, my children were removed from Greek tuition. My wife said that she'd been advised not to leave the children too much with me, and I went to the last instance, the court in Frankfurt, who confirmed that my children should no longer receive Greek tuition because apparently my children ought not to get homeschooling from me, and don't need Greek. The youngest son asked me, rang me to start the Greek lessons again. He regularly went up until the summer of 2009, and he got a very good result. But the conclusion was that it was apparently too much for the child. And two psychologists who knew the mother and experts on sexual abuse of children said that my ex-wife had abused the children. I said that I should have custody and responsibility, at least as far as the health of the children was concerned. I had a home search. I was then accused of smuggling children. I'd been on an internet platform. Actually, a website had been used that identified car numbers at my house. My address had been wrongly identified. I had been accused of trafficking in foreign children. I had requested an expert report on the state of my children's health. They were suffering psychological effects of the situation. Things were getting worse and worse for them. They needed help for this. I was presented with a bill of more than 10,000 euros, which I'm paying off, which came a year after I had the custody withdrawn. The reason for this being that I was always in arguments with the mother, and the children couldn't be torn between us like this. Then the mother moved to Bremen with sole custody since 2011. I hope my children are still alive. I've seen them just once. They asked me to speak German to them. You can imagine how I felt. And I now, following a Bremen court ruling, I'm not able to see my children anymore. And it's been said to me that if you look up Christidis under Google, you can recognize certain opinions. It is true that in 1990 I protested against the bombing of Yugoslavia, and that is now being held against me.
Siguiente.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jelly? Yes, please.
Vous avez la parole.
Bon, ben donc voilà, je suis Alain Joly.
Well, apologies, I'm blind, I can't read, so if I stutter, apologies, I didn't have time to read through this all, of course. But I hope I'm not going to talk for too long, but you've got the petitions in front of you. I'm discriminated against because of my disability. People said that I wouldn't be able to bring up my children, because if you are visually impaired, it's difficult as long as you're not German, because there's plenty of visually impaired German parents. But if you're foreign and visually impaired, then it's impossible for you to raise children. Now, there was an anonymous call. It's someone who I know. It's for the first time as I'm aware that you talk about an anonymous informant who you actually know exactly who they are, and said that perhaps I wanted to take my child, and I hadn't seen my daughter for a long time, but then it was under control. And then I think it's 2009. Well, I saw her every 3 weeks for 3 hours. I travelled from France to Germany just for those 3 hours every 3 weeks. And now for about 3 years, I go back and forth to see my daughter on Saturday evening and Sunday without being able to have her stay with me. But I am blind. I'm apparently not able to raise my children, but I am in a position apparently to abduct my child, hide her from the police, and keep her clandestinely. There's no problem about that, according to the German police. Now, what happened afterwards? That's been the case for some years now, that I'm going back and forth. It costs a lot of money, a lot tiring. It's psychological torture, really. And I do that every 3 weeks, with all the different problems that a blind person would have for such journeys. Now, my daughter is 4 years old, and we didn't manage to find a way of being able to see her, apart from the Jugendamt, or I don't know, whatever. They found another means for her to speak German. She says to me, "Dad, I'm German. I can't speak French because I got a headache. I'm German." That's extraordinary that she's so patriotic. It starts at a very early age, doesn't it? It's great. And if we jump to the present now, I very quickly realised that my ex-partner, who left because I refused to have another child, went off with another man, and it was actually her who took away the child. And over the course of all this procedure, I realised very quickly that almost certainly I'm persuaded of the fact that she had already left her new partner. So those changes are quite significant for a young girl, and I needed to start new proceedings in order to ask for custody of my daughter again. I got implicit threats from the judge, who said, "Do you really want to continue with these proceedings for custody of your child?" I did continue, and it was clear that I don't know who came, the person who came, a tutor, an assistant, someone legal. It was the lawyer in charge of the child matters in Germany, and they came and said, oh, you might be leaving again. And she came without an interpreter. I didn't understand anything that she said at all. And then what happened was that I had to go to court again. There was 2 to 3 hours in a hearing, and they said that it was myself who was doing that to the child, and the judge, however, had clearly written that it was the mother that was taking away the child, but the child was supposed to stay with the mother. There was the accusations, therefore, of the judge. And, well, I think it's extraordinary that if you make a complaint about a judge, it's their colleagues in their own firm who decide whether they've been in the right or the wrong. And I think, of course, they went for the counterparty as regards whether the judge was impartial or not. I've never seen that before, and it cost some more money, hundreds of euros. And then Madame Bachelet, I've been in contact for various years now. Now, could you please wrap up? Are you almost finished? Just 30 seconds. Now, there was another case where the father said there was damages in that case with Madame Bachelet, and they looked at the situation, they questioned the ex-partner, the child, and they talked about things that had happened in France, and they didn't call those witnesses in France at all. There was an investigation in France that was completely ignored because they didn't find anything there at all, and they couldn't do anything else, so they've left that. But now I either will have to go to prison or pay 240 euros of fine. I don't think there'll be ever a decision. Things are going to stay as they are. I've got that sword hanging on a thread above my head, and I don't know what's going to, but they'll do something.
Allora, c'è un'altra persona qui.
Is there another person who was asked for the floor?
Sì, è il signor Putin che aveva fatto anche lui una.
Mr. Potenti also had a petition. There was just one aspect to add, just very briefly, about this administrative authority that has acted in Europe. The European Commission wanted to speak about this because there was a request that we sent, but we didn't receive a reply to this. It concerns the issue explained also by Mr. Gilberti, and this is the case where a child is taken to Germany. From the moment that this child, who is illegally removed to Germany, does set foot in Germany, if it's a German parent that has taken this child to Germany, who is basically an abductor, they receive in advance money that they have requested. But if the opposite takes place, the decision is taken even in violation of the European regulations and in violation of all the legal texts, and basically money is given to a German abductor of a child, and if the case is brought before foreign courts, then a lawsuit is brought against you, because in Germany, apparently, the rights of foreign parents are not recognized. Thank you very much. Just a second, Mr. Julie.
Ils ont demandé la parole. J'ai juste une toute petite question que j'ai.
Just a little question I haven't had the opportunity to ask. My petition was declared admissible, and an inquiry was ordered. I haven't had any news of that. When will I get the results of this inquiry?
Decía que habían pedido la palabra 4 diputados.
I told you that 4 members of parliament have asked for the floor. We wish to give them time so that they can respond to the issues raised by the petitioners, and we have to end at 6:30. So, Mr. Boulon, Mrs. Benmark, and two other colleagues. Mr. Boulon, I think you had asked for the floor first.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. J'avais pas.
Thank you. I hadn't actually asked straight away for the floor, Chairman. I wanted to let my colleague speak, but anyway, perhaps to take the floor afterwards. But anyway, you've asked me to speak. I think what we've heard this afternoon from the petitioners, we've seen all the suffering that has been caused by administrative and judicial machine that has completely overwhelmed them personally, because perhaps they don't have the means to fight against that administrative and legal machine, or neither financial resources nor perhaps family support, professional support to withstand that. And I think you've seen the huge impact that has had at every level in their lives. I think if we're going to draw some general conclusions from all of these individual, very touching and moving cases, which do not leave us cold in this committee. I think this committee has a heart. We are here to listen to citizens. We represent citizens. We have to find answers to citizens who come to us and who've come to us with petitions that have been deemed admissible. So we've got to find a response. I think what we need to look into is all of the discrimination that can happen in the administrative procedures they're faced with in a foreign country, either because they don't speak the language, although in some cases they're German, but because the whole system is very complex, difficult to understand. Iniquitous decisions which are taken on the evening of a day where, say, a non-German parent is coming for an officially approved visit as part of their visiting rights, when all of a sudden at the doorstep they're told that they haven't got the right, and if they insist on seeing their child they face prison. These are not acceptable ways to treat people. There's the case of decisions, as in the case of Mr. Cédric Laurent, who's present here, although he didn't speak himself. There was a decision taken by a court in France which was later challenged by Germany and by the Jugendamt. That's not acceptable. You have to respect the legal proceedings of other countries as well. Or there have to be bridges between jurisdictions, between courts. There have to be intermediaries. There have to be specialized judges there to help people. Why do you issue a European arrest warrant on the mere presumption that a non-German parent might abduct their child when they're just taking them for agreed holidays, and you issue an arrest warrant? Or issue an arrest warrant for somebody who's allegedly not paying their child support when they've actually been paying more than they were supposed to for years? Why should such a person find themselves in prison, extradited, when they've actually paid more than they were required to? And when there are civil proceedings that should be considered before you start issuing European arrest warrants, there are other channels for this. So all of this is Kafkaesque and unacceptable. We had a fact-finding mission in Berlin, which we obtained nothing from. We had a report that took ages to come out, and we had no tangible result. We had no help from the German administration on any of the petitions that we got on this subject, both prior to and after our visit to Berlin. So perhaps we should try to shake things up a bit. Perhaps we should say to our friend Germany, assume your responsibilities. The way you're acting actually is tantamount to a failure to assist a person in danger. Germany needs to do something, has to imagine other proceedings, other forms of appeal or recourse, maybe outside the judiciary, maybe outside the Jugendamt, that ought to make it possible to avoid that people can take decisions that ruin the lives of several people in the family of a child. These children are future European citizens. What future will they face? We, I think, as representatives of citizens, should defend their interests. We're on the eve of European elections. You can't talk about Europe with a capital E unless you talk about the ideas and the freedom of movement and the rights that Europe represents. And it seems that you can't afford to have children in Germany without the risk of losing them one day. So I suggest that the petitions remain open, that we ask the European Commission to issue a warning to Germany, calling on Germany to assume its responsibilities and to find procedures that can help these people in difficulties, these people who are suffering. I really think that what is happening is tantamount to failure to assist a person in danger.
Mr. Villan. Mr. Villan, please, you have the floor.
Yes, well, I didn't actually ask for the floor at all. But just as regards Beistandschaft, I'd like to hear something from the Commission. I think we should deal with that separately. That's once again a different aspect. But I think I should explicitly state that here, these petitions and the subject matter of the petitions can only be those matters which EU citizens experience due to cross-border matters, and this is the discrimination that they experience because they're not German citizens. I think that's the only point that we address. I think with these matters we can look at that. I think 5 or 6 years ago we had a very intensive discussion, and we said that in the cases presented that for that the petitions were admissible. But the fact that in a country, and I've studied family law, that if in a country things go wrong, or with individual rulings, if they are proved to be wrong objectively, then of course we can't have the excuse that this happens in a bigger country more often than a smaller country. We're talking about people's lives here. But the justice system isn't always perfect. And it has methods and methodology. I've listened to you and I haven't interrupted you at all. So I think just I would say that in addition, Mr. Bouillon, well, the timetable that we had in Germany was very tight. There were international mediation bodies. There were German, French judges, and the French judge said they couldn't understand why the German system was any worse than the other systems. And we had those discussions, and it was difficult for full participation in those programs. But I don't really think you can use that as an explicit argument. But I'll be quite clear here. If there are cases of violation of child support payment rulings, that's not anything to do with European law. And I would say that the European Charter of Human Rights is something that does oblige member states. Of course, it's obligatory for all, whether we're dealing with European law or not. But the current state of play means that it is binding if it's dealing with European law. And there are matters, of course, that countries deal with nationally and are restricted there. But child support is certainly not part of that. And Mr. Bouillon, I think what you're saying doesn't make sense. Of course, they've paid more child support than they had to. Well, there's no rule where that can be paid back, or you can just say because you don't want to pay anymore that you're not going to pay at all. Then you go into prison in France. And those are issues that we could certainly look at. But I think that if you refuse to pay your child support, it's completely normal that there would be an arrest warrant out for you. And of course, with all respect to the petitioners, but they've also said that they've had legal problems, but they want to explicitly ask Madam Colombo, for instance, well, if there's a crime, of course, especially in German law, if there's a crime with a sentence of a prison sentence of at least a year, well, it's difficult to look at that. But Madam Colombo, if there's a legally binding ruling, whether it's from a German court or is it from an Italian court, and were you given a prison sentence for that, or did you serve a prison sentence? I'd really like to hear exactly what you've got to say about that.
Do I need to reply? Yes, if there's a direct question asked to you, please answer that question directly, and only that. Since I have claimed that I'm an expert in... I didn't claim that I was an expert in family law, but I have studied this issue. What is definitive is that there was a sentence by the district attorney's office, the prosecutor's office in Milan, which said that my husband falsified the tradition, that the translation of the document that said that he had a right to custody, which he did not in fact have, and it's the court of Milan that said that my children should not have been kept in Germany, but I still haven't seen them. Yes, our colleague, please. Very briefly.
They have finished it.
Okay.
Mr. Yes. Sí. Quiero decirle que cuando terminen los diputados.
When the members have finished, you will have the chance to speak. The petitioners will have the chance to speak briefly. Yes, Mr. Berman, please.
Okay, danke schön. Also, ich möchte mich...
Thank you very much. Broadly, I think I would endorse what Mr. Wieland has said. I think there is a problem if we discuss or declare admissible petitions about child support issues. I think this is a problem for the member state legislation, not for the EU.
Perdónenme. Ha interrumpido varias veces. No.
Excuse me, you have interrupted various speakers. Please.
Condescendientes con ustedes.
I think I have been very understanding with you. Let's follow the rules, please. I said we can hold a debate, and you were not interrupted. Please don't let this happen again.
Thank you. Well, with all due respect for the petitioners, we respect them for coming here, presenting their cases, but it's our job as MEPs to advise the petitioners and help them, and we have to identify whether any European law has been violated, yes or no. I think we are limited for time. Of course, there are administrative problems. There are problems of discrimination. I was on the delegation to Berlin. I'm fully aware of the problems involved. And in the next Petitions Committee meeting in July or in the autumn, I think we ought to have a detailed discussion on this issue in the coordinators meeting. And Mr. Bourland, there's something I'd like to say to you. I am aware that, on the contrary, there are German citizens whose children have been abducted to France and who have not got their children back with the simple justification that they had been too Germanified. So I don't think we're here to pass down legal decisions. All I want to say is that we as MEPs can only really address questions that apply to violations of applicable EU law. And My door is always open to anyone who has problems with violations of European law, and that's the message I wanted to give you.
Señora Bergman, señor Iresalva.
Thank you, Mrs. Bertman. Who else wished to speak now?
Bueno, voy a ser breve. Lo que hemos...
I will be brief. What we heard today means that reminds me of another meeting 15 days ago when we heard about similar cases in Great Britain. I can't say whether these cases involve violations of European law, but they seem to be a problem overall. And it's a problem that the Commission should, that the Committee and the Commission need to reply to, because it's an issue of the rights of European citizens. I think that we need to follow the same path as we did in the petition involving Great Britain. This petition should be open, and I think it's a rather grave issue that in various member states of the European Union, like has happened in Great Britain, and in this case in Germany as well, parents are being kept away from their children. And there's issues of various rights here: the rights of children, the rights of parents, the rights of minorities, linguistic rights, and other types of rights. I think that this petition needs to remain open. I know that it won't be us that we won't be the ones that will have the chance to discuss it, because we might not be in the next Parliament. But the message we need to send to the Commission is that the Commission needs to work hard on this issue, and it needs to study at the European level what sort of report or relation can be developed, or regulation, to avoid that some problems of this type come up at the European Union level. And this petition committee deals with various issues which are not just British issues or German issues, but are issues of various member states. But it's time for the European Union to deal with these sorts of issues and find a solution that is adequate at the European level. Thank you, thank you, colleague. Now let's see. Now I'm going to give you the floor. Are you a petitioner?
No, sí, pero esto no funciona así.
I'm sorry, but it doesn't quite work that way. Because we are going to have to leave in a few. Which of the petitioners would now like to speak in response to on some points? Yes, the lady first. 2 minutes to each one of you, and then the gentleman who asked the floor as well. 2 minutes only, please.
Grazie.
All right, thank you. We didn't come here to discuss problems of custody. When I mentioned this, it was just to explain that children are being used to send money to Germany. That's not just the issue. The issue is that there are children whose identity is being denied. They are being denied their father or their mother just because that father or mother is not German. That is the issue. The other thing I'd like to ask you, when you have studies and missions, do you also hear with somebody who is a specialist, not just a German, but there are also non-German people that are specialized in German law? Because when I read that you've gone, or hear that you've gone to Berlin and you spoke with the German judge and an expert on the German civil code, where everything seems to be like it is in France with and Great Britain and everything else, but they do not mention the code that governs the powers of the Jugendamt, that doesn't seem correct. So I think maybe you need to consult with some experts who are not just Germans in terms of law. And also, on terms of laws and rights, since we're talking about European law and European rights, in Germany, there's a family court whereby, according to law, a citizen who asks for custody does not obtain it from an independent authority. It's the family court judge that decides on this, and decides on custody only if there is a good chance of success. That's what German law says. If this can be reconciled with European rights, please, I ask you to tell me that.
What I would say, I would have hoped more from the German representative in the committee. What I heard, I don't think was quite correct. For instance, maintenance payments, and we've got the other examples of the UK, France, and so on. So at least I am comforted if I pay and I don't leave Germany, then I don't get into trouble elsewhere. But it's not true. It's false. And if you try to shed light on this, or state as if that wasn't the system. Now we talk about 10,000 euros for expertise, and within 5 minutes we said that that expertise that wasn't used. Now there's one reason, that was just for the officials to try to get rid of me. That was withdrawn without even being discussed in court, but I still had to pay for that. And then in 2 out of 16 federal Länder in Hesse and Bremen, there's a situation, and with all of these hierarchies, they can't get Greek lessons. They just can't get Greek lessons, even though they're Greek citizens. And since 2004, they haven't really seen their father. Or they're not able to get the Greek passport. But with the German passport, it's difficult, even with joint custody. That's the system. It's not just a one-off case. And the demand there that I have to speak German with my children, but I'm Greek, and all of my relatives are in Greece. I'm the only person who's left Greece. I want my children to be able to know my family, to speak to them properly, and at least that needs to be minuted, because we need that needs to be put in writing. The mother needs to say that they haven't been abused, but they haven't asked those questions. That hasn't been reported. That's the system.
Ich möchte nur eine ganz kurze Frage stellen.
I'd just like to put a short question. We keep being referred back to domestic law, but I really wonder why Germany signs international conventions, human rights conventions and so forth, if it has no intention of observing them. Germany has committed itself under the Human Rights Charter to give children the right to having two parents. They have the right to see their parents. Only when children are really in danger can that be denied. And if you look at German legal practice, you see that's a very clear violation of this international convention, whether it's at UN level or EU level. So why does Germany sign up to this then? And why are German signatures even accepted anymore?
La señora Berman ha pedido la palabra.
Before you, Mrs. Wertmann asked for the floor. Ms. Wertmann, please.
Well, I think I completely agree with you on one point. Children, wherever you're on the planet, they have the right to both parents. I don't think we need to discuss that. And I think on that point, we need to back the petitioners. I think that's the approach that we need to take. We need to look at that in more detail. The rights of the child need to be respected. I just wanted to make that comment.
Vamos a ver, tenemos ya el problema.
Let's say we already have a problem. Our interpreters have already allowed us more time than they are permitted, and they need to finish their work. We need to finish our work. I know that you have asked for the floor. I don't know if you could speak in English. We are willing to continue briefly in English or in French. I don't know if there's a problem. Or if you can have somebody translate for you. Who has asked for the floor?
Due parole solamente.
Just 2 words in Italian. All right? It's good to have the petitions left open, in spite of the absence of the Commission, which should have been here. Long life to Europe. Not the one I saw today, hopefully another one. But I hope that eventually in 2100, some reply will be given to this petition and to others. That's all that I'm asking. Thank you. Can I just say one thing? One thing. Please turn on your microphone.
I just wanted to say that there's clearly a need for discussion. It would be nice if you would participate. If we in Germany say that we want to talk to you about the problems, Mrs. Bergmann, we want to talk about these issues.
Ich muss darauf antworten.
Well, I have to respond to that. If you could tell me your name, I'm afraid I don't know your name.
Ich habe mich nicht eingeladen.
You didn't invite me. I'm not aware of any invitation for me to come and talk to you. Of course I'm happy to speak to you. There's no problem about that. Anybody knows that on any question concerning children, they can come to me and they will find a listening ear. And the next step that I have to take in my work is to look at your documents, look at your evidence, and find out where European law has been violated. So please be careful. Don't accuse me. It's just not acceptable.
To go away.
Es muss Ihnen klar sein, wenn Sie hier sagen, es muss klar sein, wenn
I think it has to be clear. If people are saying that I have to say here, I object. I'm here because it's about children. I'm always here for discussions about children. I was a bit late. I have to apologize. But now I have to leave. I have a meeting at 7 o'clock and I have no alternative. I'm afraid I can't stay any longer. I'm sorry.
We have gone beyond our scheduled time, and I have to insist. I thank all of you who have spoken, but we're going to have to close for now. The petition will remain open, and what we are going to do... We're already behind schedule, please.
Je regrette, je voulais répondre à mes collègues, mais dire à Mme Wertmann qu'il y avait aussi...
I wanted to answer to my colleague. I mean, there are also Austrian cases. I mean, the reason why we're talking about the Jugendamt is because there are hundreds of cases, which is unfortunately not the case, or is not the case in any other country. Unfortunately, Mr. Wieland is no longer here. He bravely left before the end of the debate. But I would like to say to him that when you talk about maintenance payments, I agree with him. But if failure to comply with a maintenance payment means you get a European arrest warrant out for you, I find that not normal. Anyway, I hope the petition will remain open, and I hope as well we'll be able to give them some responses regards the Commission's opinion.
I apologize on behalf of the European Commission, although I am not a representative of the European Commission, but I really regret their absence and I really wish they had been here. We are going to forward your complaints to the European Commission, and we are going to ask the European Commission to provide comments and analyses and send them to each one of you, to each one of the petitioners for each one of the petitions, and to the German authorities as well. We are going to exhort them to find a solution for these cases, for each one that we have heard today, with your arguments. And the new arguments that you've mentioned today are going to be sent to the German authority, and we're going to demand a reply from them. And I hope that we will not have to wait to 2100. And what I will tell you, as the chairman, is that as soon as possible, we will have these letters sent out. This legislative term is ending on May 25th, and this is the last meeting of the Petitions Committee, but in the next legislative term, you will be able to deal with them on this issue, and I'm going to ask the Secretariat to put this to the attention of the next Petitions Committee meeting. And this